December 5th, 1945. 5 TBM. Avenger torpedo bombers roar over the Atlantic. The sky is clear. The mission is routine. But inside the lead cockpit, Lieutenant Charles Taylor is staring at his instrument panel in disbelief. Both of his compasses have just gone haywire. "I don't know where we are," he crackles over the radio, his voice tight with an unrecognizable fear. Everything is wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look like it should. Suddenly, the signal fades into static. 14 airmen, elite and experienced, vanish into thin air. No debris, no oil slicks, nothing. But the nightmare was just beginning. When a massive rescue PBM Mariner was sent to find them, it vanished too, just 20 minutes after takeoff. It was as if the sky itself had opened up and swallowed an entire fleet. You've heard the legends, the vortexes, the aliens, the lost city of Atlantis. For decades, the Bermuda Triangle has been the ultimate graveyard of the Atlantic, a place where logic goes to die. But what if the most terrifying truth isn't what happened in the clouds, but what was recently found beneath the waves? Welcome to the Kanata Files. Today, we strip away the myths. Using declassified documents and cutting-edge oceanography, we are finally revealing a reality far more chilling than any ghost story. This is the final investigation of the Bermuda Triangle. To understand the terror of the Bermuda Triangle, we must look back at the trail of ghosts it has left across a century of maritime history. It didn't start with airplanes. It started with the very men who first mapped the Atlantic. In October 1492, Christopher Columbus, perhaps the greatest navigator of his era, was crossing the Sargasso Sea, moving deeper into what we now know as the Triangle. His logs describe a scene that would haunt sailors for centuries. On the night of October 11th, Columbus and his crew reported a mysterious light like a wax candle rising and falling in the distance. But the real panic set in when his primary tool of survival, the compass, began to fail. The needle didn't just drift, it spun in erratic, impossible patterns, as if the laws of physics had been rewritten. Columbus was forced to lie to his crew about their position to prevent a mutiny, but in his private journals, the confusion was clear. He had encountered a force that logic could not explain. For 300 years, the area remained a graveyard for Spanish galleons, but the mystery reached a fever pitch in March 1918. The world was gripped by the Great War, and the U.S. Navy deployed its pride, the USS Cyclops. This wasn't just a ship. It was a 542-foot-long steel behemoth, specifically designed to carry over 12,000 tons of heavy manganese ore. It was a floating fortress with a crew of 306 experienced souls. On March 4th, the Cyclops departed Barbados for Baltimore. The weather was reported as fair. The ship was in peak mechanical condition. Yet, as it crossed the invisible threshold into the Triangle, the Cyclops didn't just sink. It vanished. In any maritime disaster, there is a sequence. NSOS call. Lifeboats launched, debris floating on the surface. But for the Cyclops, there was only silence. Not a single piece of the 12,000-ton steel hull was ever found. No bodies, no oil slicks, no floating cargo. The Assistant Secretary of the Navy at the time stated, "There has been no more baffling mystery in the annals of the Navy than the disappearance of this ship." How does a city-sized vessel, equipped with radio and surrounded by shipping lanes, simply cease to exist? As aviation took to the skies, the Triangle claimed a new kind of victim. In 1948, the Star Tiger, a British South American Airways Tudor 4, was flying from the Azores to Bermuda. Just before its scheduled arrival, the pilot, Captain Colby, radioed for a routine position check. He reported clear skies and a smooth flight. 10 minutes later, the plane was gone. 1 year later, its sister ship, the Star Ariel, vanished under identical conditions: clear weather, veteran pilots, and zero distress signals. The official British investigation into these star planes concluded with a chilling admission. It may truly be said that no more baffling problem has ever been presented for investigation. In the complete absence of any reliable evidence, what happened can only be a matter of conjecture. These are the data points of a century-long nightmare. At the Kanata Files, we've cross-referenced these historical logs with modern shipping data. We found that these disappearances don't follow the patterns of typical storms or rogue waves. There is a terrifying surgical precision to how the triangle operates. It waits for the perfect moment, strikes without a sound, and erases every trace of its presence. If it's not just bad luck or human error, then we have to consider the impossible. Many theorists point to the massive magnetic anomalies Columbus first reported. Others suggest that the seafloor here holds secrets older than humanity itself. But as we transition into the most famous disappearance of all, the lost flight of 1945, we find a piece of evidence that suggests these men weren't just lost. They were being led into a trap. But the disappearance of the USS Cyclops was only the beginning of a grim family legacy. Most people don't realize that the Cyclops had two sister ships, the USS Nereus and the USS Proteus. In 1941, during the height of World War II, both of these steel giants followed their sister into the void. They vanished on the exact same route, under the exact same conditions. Three massive ships from the same class, all swallowed by the same patch of ocean. The odds of this being a coincidence are billions to one. It raises a haunting question. Is the triangle targeting specific structures, or is it a territorial warning from something we don't yet understand? This brings us to the human heart of the mystery, the legendary Flight 19. On December 5th, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale. These Yash weren't rookies. They were led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a combat veteran with over 2,500 flying hours. Yet, as they entered the triangle, the man who had survived the Pacific War became a stranger to his own senses. "Both my compasses are out," Taylor radioed, his voice trembling with a disorientation that chilled the controllers at the base. "I am overland, but it's broken. I am sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." The broken land he saw beneath him was the Bahamas, but his brain refused to accept the reality shown by his eyes. For over 2 hours, the base heard the pilots arguing. Some wanted to fly west toward the sunset, the only logical way to hit the Florida coast. But Taylor, convinced they were in the Gulf of Mexico, ordered them east, deeper into the open, hungry Atlantic. Was this just a tragic case of spatial disorientation, or was there an external force warping their perception? Many pilots who survived near misses in the triangle report a phenomenon called electronic fog, a thick glowing mist that seems to cling to the aircraft, causing instruments to spin and time to seemingly skip. At the Kanata Files, we've investigated declassified pilot testimonies that describe the sky turning a bruised purple, where the horizon disappears and the ocean and sky become one suffocating trap. When the rescue PBM Mariner exploded just 20 minutes into its search, the supernatural theories exploded with it. If the Navy's best technology couldn't survive here, what could? This void in information was quickly filled by the most radical ideas humanity could conceive. First, the legend of Atlantis. Psychics like Edgar Cayce claimed that the lost continent lies directly beneath the triangle. They suggest that ancient, giant energy crystals used to power Atlantis are still active on the seafloor, occasionally firing beams of massive energy that shatter modern navigation systems and disintegrate anything in their path. While it sounds like science fiction, thousands of people swear by the Bimini Road, a series of stone formations underwater that look eerily like a man-made highway leading into the deep. Then, there is the vile vortex theory. Some researchers argue that the Bermuda Triangle is one of 12 points on Earth where the planet's magnetic field is so thin that it creates portals to other dimensions. This would explain why no debris is ever found. The ships and planes aren't at the bottom of the ocean, they are simply elsewhere. And of course, we cannot ignore the UFO connection. Since the days of Columbus and his wax candle in the sky, thousands of unidentified submerged objects, USOs, have been reported diving into these waters at speeds no human vessel could match. Some believe the triangle isn't a graveyard, but a laboratory, a place where an advanced intelligence harvests our technology and our people for study. The US Navy officially attributes these losses to unidentified causes, a vague phrase that has only fueled the fire of conspiracy. But as we transition from the ghosts of the past to the cold, hard data of the present, we have to ask, could the answer be much simpler, and yet much more terrifying? Is the ocean itself the monster? While the human mind naturally clings to myths of ancient civilizations or extraterrestrial visitors to fill the void of the unknown, the Earth itself provides a far more violent and calculated explanation. To understand why modern vessels simply vanish within the Bermuda Triangle, we must look not toward the stars, but thousands of feet beneath the rolling waves and deep into the mechanics of our atmosphere. The first, and perhaps most terrifying scientific culprit, is a volatile substance hidden in the seabed: methane hydrate. Imagine the ocean floor not as solid rock, but as a pressurized cage holding back colossal reserves of frozen natural gas. When tectonic shifts occur, or underwater landslides disturb these deposits, the cage breaks. A massive concentrated plume of methane gas erupts, surging toward the surface like a silent, invisible explosion. As these millions of bubbles rise, they expand rapidly, fundamentally altering the physics of the water above. They transform the dense, buoyant seawater into a frothy, aerated soup. In this state, the water loses its ability to support weight. For a massive ship like the USS Cyclops, the laws of buoyancy simply cease to exist. The 12,000-ton steel giant wouldn't tilt or slowly flood. It would literally drop into the abyss as if a trapdoor had been pulled from under it. Within 60 seconds, the gas dissipates, the ocean closes over the site, and the surface returns to a perfect, undisturbed blue. No debris, no oil slicks, no survivors. It is a surgical strike executed by the planet itself. But what about the victims in the clouds? If the ocean floor is a trapdoor, the sky over the triangle is a hammer. Meteorologists using high-resolution satellite imaging have identified a rare phenomenon here: hexagonal clouds. These are not your typical storm clouds. They are the visible edges of localized air bombs. These formations create intense microbursts, concentrated blasts of air that slam downward from the edge of the clouds at speeds exceeding 170 miles per hour. When a flight like the 5 Avengers of Flight 19 encounters such a force, they aren't just flying into a storm, they are being struck by an invisible weight equivalent to hundreds of tons. It is enough to snap the wings of a modern aircraft or drive it directly into the waves in a matter of heartbeats, long before a pilot can even think to engage the emergency frequency. Then, there is the phenomenon that haunts every survivor's testimony: the electronic fog. For decades, it was dismissed as a hallucination, until science began to look at the unique magnetic profile of the triangle. This region is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north perfectly align, creating a complex interaction of electromagnetic forces. Under certain conditions, this can generate a localized, highly charged fog. This isn't just water vapor, it's a plasma-like mist that clings to metal hulls and fuselages. It jams radar, spins compasses into useless circles, and, most disturbingly, causes a phenomenon known as time dilation or spatial warping. Pilots have reported flying through these mists and arriving at their destinations hours ahead of schedule, with no memory of the journey. Yet, even with these violent natural forces, we must face the cold, hard data provided by the world's most pragmatic institutions. At the Kanata Files, we've scrutinized the comprehensive logs of Lloyd's of London, the global authority on maritime insurance for over 3 centuries. Their conclusion is a sobering reality check. Statistically, the Bermuda Triangle is no more dangerous than any other heavily traveled ocean route on the planet. When you factor in the sheer density of traffic, the thousands of massive cargo ships, luxury cruise liners, and private yachts that transit these waters every single day, the percentage of losses is entirely within the global average. The mystery of the triangle, as scientist Karl Kruszelnicki argues, may be more about human psychology than physical anomalies. We have a biological bias toward the spectacular. We remember the 5 missing planes of 1945 with vivid clarity, but we ignore the tens of thousands of successful crossings that occur every year without incident. We have taken a combination of unpredictable weather, human error under pressure, and magnetic variations that early navigators didn't understand, and we have woven them into a modern ghost story. However, science explains the how, but it often fails to capture the why. It can explain the physics of a methane eruption, but it cannot explain the final, haunting radio transmissions of men who claimed the ocean turned white and the sky went black in the middle of a sunny day. It cannot explain the eerie silence that follows when the world's best technology simply blinks out of existence. Perhaps the truth is that the Bermuda Triangle isn't a place of supernatural magic, but a place where the raw primal forces of our world become so concentrated that they shatter the thin veneer of safety we call civilization. As we reach the conclusion of this investigation, we realize the triangle is more than a map location. It is a mirror. It reflects our deep-seated fear of the abyss, our obsession with the things we cannot control, and the chilling realization that despite our satellites and our steel, we are still small, fragile guests on a very restless planet. So, what is the final verdict on the Bermuda Triangle? Is it a playground for extraterrestrials, a remnant of a lost civilization, or simply the most misunderstood patch of ocean on Earth? The data suggests that the triangle isn't a supernatural vortex, but a natural one. It is a place where the perfect storm of human error, magnetic shifts, and geological violence meets the busiest shipping lanes in the Western Hemisphere. Science has given us the how, but for many, it will never satisfy the why. Because the true power of the Bermuda Triangle isn't in its waves, it's in its legend. It serves as a haunting reminder that despite our GPS, our steel hulls, and our satellite surveillance, the ocean remains the last great frontier, an untamable force that doesn't care about our schedules or our technology. The files may be declassified, and the methane bubbles may be mapped, but as long as a single pilot looks down and sees a white sea where the horizon used to be, the mystery will endure. Thank you for investigating this case with us at the Kanata Files. If you want to dive deeper into the world's most baffling mysteries and uncovered history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. But before you go, tell us, in the middle of a vast, lonely ocean, what do you think truly happened to the men of Flight 19? We will be reading your theories in the comments below.